We are here on Stories from the Field, the Superintendent podcast, IEI's podcast, where we talk about leadership, mentorship. And I'm really excited to have our friend, Ms. Iranetta Wright, the Superintendent Emeritus from Cincinnati Public Schools, Floridian by birth and identity, right?
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm great. Thanks for being here. So Iranetta led a really wonderful session yesterday that I told you afterwards kind of spoke to me. It was a session on resilience, but it also had a lesson for me that as a person who can be pretty resilient, I need to also try to be empathetic as others around me. I have to make sure that it's okay for them to not be okay. That was your message that really resonated with me. So we're glad to have you here speaking. So I've been told I can be a pretty good wingman. I was your wingman on the Cincinnati News that day, remember? I don't have all my notes in front of me, but let's just share out, give us the story on the results that you delivered for kids in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so it was a wonderful experience. When we think about really making sure that we focus on kids and doing what's best for children. I am an outcome-focused person, and I believe that at the end of it all, we have to make sure, regardless of all the barriers that we see, we have to make sure that our children are learning in the process and that we're able to assess that. So in the time that I was able to lead us to the best outcomes that we've had in over 15 years. When we look back at the data just from that 2-year window, the research says that when a superintendent first goes in, the first year you see decline generally before you see improvement. But that year we were able to get improvement and continue that improvement the following year. And so we outperformed the other Ohio 8 districts in both reading and math. We outperformed the state in both reading and math. And we were really beginning to see the trajectory continuing to move forward in the way that we were looking at the work and how we were building.
Yep. The Ohio 8, of course, the big 8 districts in Ohio. So similar demographics, right? Yeah. Well, tell us what you're working on now.
Yeah, so currently I am the founder and CEO of the Wright Way Leadership Group. After I transitioned out of my specific role as superintendent, it was really important for me to stay connected to the field and continue to move forward with what I really, really, really enjoy doing. And what I enjoy doing is leadership, right? I enjoy executive coaching. I enjoy helping others solve problems. I enjoy, principal leadership and leadership training and strategic planning and all those things that school districts need and that they often need support with. And I do that with the lens of getting to outcomes for kids. So sometimes we don't recognize how all of the small intricacies play into the overall theme, right? And if the theme becomes, we want to make sure that we're getting to outcomes for children, then not only do we need to have a quality strategic plan, but we need to make certain that there's quality implementation. So I've really started quite a bit of keynote speaking around this concept of that's action research based for me. It's worked in 3 different states at this point, and even as a high school principal, being able to lead a high school in a 4-year period, the lowest performing high school in Florida, from an F to a B, using the same concept. So there are about 7 keys that I focus on, and it's outcome focused leadership. The 7 keys to improving outcomes with precision. And I've been able to reach over 500,000 kids just in a short period of time from the beginning of this year. Didn't even think about, last year, but from the beginning of this year until now, by really going into districts and working with them through the concepts and doing the training with them. I started a cohort program as well. So it's a little more intimate. So it's really been an exciting time.
Oh, talk about the cohort.
Yeah.
This is a group that you work with all year?
Yeah. So actually I work with them for a period of about 8 weeks where we're doing direct sessions, 6 to 8 weeks.
From different districts or one district?
Different districts. We could do it in one district, but I've had my first cohort. The second one starts in September. And it was a compilation of people from different districts. I had folks from Michigan, from Florida, from Philadelphia, from Texas that were a part of the cohort. And so we go through really digging into each of the focus areas of those 7 areas, right? Yeah. And then we pair them with coaches by doing mentorship with people that have had good outcomes.
Yeah.
So they're able to talk through those things as well. So looking forward to the next cohort that starts in September.
What do you miss about being superintendent every day? And what do you like about this post-superintendent life?
Yeah, it's funny. Someone asked me that just yesterday, and they were surprised by my response. And the question, the answer is, I miss the kids. I miss being in school buildings and actually seeing children and interacting with them and talking to them about how things are going and looking at what they're doing. So when I said this to that particular person yesterday, he said to me, there were people at my high school that I miss, but I can't tell you I ever saw my superintendent. So the fact that your first response would be you miss the kids says a lot about who you are as an individual. I think the other thing that if there was something that I miss, it's improving outcomes for children in a direct way, right? Going into a district and taking work that is good work and working to lead it to better, right? So that you're able to make it, manageable, and you're able to not just look at the goals, but identify that you are improving in every one of those areas from, something as simple as recruitment and retention, being the highest that it had been in 5 years, or looking at, we got national recognition for recovery from the pandemic, or national recognition for the transportation and improving those things. So I think that, those would be the things that when you really think about outcomes, it's outcomes. A lot of my outcomes that I talk about academics, but it really works in anything, right? Yeah. When you get in, you have authentic assessment, you identify the problem, you make sure that you have the right team, and you continue to move forward with the work. I think what I enjoy about what I'm doing now is I am now not only am I doing public speaking or keynote speaking and working with districts that way, but I'm also going into districts now and working in school districts. So I'm getting an opportunity to go into classrooms with school leaders and talk about what we're seeing and help them audit what's currently happening in their programs, because their desire is to move from good to better, right? Yeah. And so making sure that that's done with an intentional eye. And what several superintendents talk to me about is sometimes it's easier when the conversation comes from someone else. It's like you think about with your own kids. I have a 22 and 24-year-old, and I've been in scenarios where, we may be sitting with friends of mine, and one of my friends will say something to them, and they act like it's the first time they ever heard it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I've been telling you that for the last 10 years, right? But they receive it and they hear it differently when it's coming from someone else. Yeah. And so sometimes we see that that's the same. And so building quality relationships with those that I'm working with, and then coaching them through the process as well.
Yeah, right. It's like we just had this experience. My daughter just did a music audition for New York State, and I told her she did a great job, and she was like, no, down on herself. But grandma told her she did a good job. Right. My mom, and she's like, oh, okay, great. Like it's kids.
I have so many of those scenarios. I can tell you, right?
Doesn't matter who the messengers. Make sure they get the message.
That's right.
Also, do you enjoy only having one cell phone? That's kind of a perk of not being a superintendent, right?
So I do. I mean, it's a little bit.
So you talked to us about taking care of ourselves, and that's sort of part of your brand, is not just being #FitLeader, but like really focusing on our own health and you shared a kind of personal story yesterday. How do you do it? What's your strategy for managing all of that while also staying on top of all the work? And how can soups who are weighing a billion spinning plates at any given moment?
I think one of the things is, and when I was asked to come to this session and to do speaking around the session, it was because of that being a part of my brand, right? Of really making sure that we're promoting taking care of yourself.
It was your brand when you were in the job, too.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think about that. I remember someone asked me years ago, this was before I became a superintendent, but they asked me, why do you put your workouts on social media?
Right.
And I said, because I have found that it motivates other people. When we're in these roles and we're educators, and it doesn't matter what level of education you're in, it is tough work and it's intensive all the time. And so the first thing that I would say is, as educators, as system leaders, we have to be intentional about our own self-care, right? We have to be intentional. I give some strategies around putting on the calendar the time that you are going to rest, right? It could be a 10-minute brain break. I gave the example yesterday. We do brain breaks in classes with children. We've seen a lot of times where we go in and children are doing a brain break. They need that, right? They need that so that they're more productive when they come back to whatever the activity is. As leaders, we need it as well because there's so much coming to you at one time. So that's the first. I think the second is so one is being intentional. The second is you have to be honest with yourself about your own self-care, right? Are you truly taking care of yourself, or are you saying that you're taking care of yourself? And if you are taking care of yourself, what is your self-care plan? What do you do? What brings you joy? What works for me? I run, and most people know that. I've been running for a long time. It's funny, I still don't consider myself a runner, but I run, right? However, running is not for everybody. And so I don't subscribe to a one size fits all as you think about care, right? What is self-care for you? I do encourage activity, at least 10 to 15 minutes of activity a day, right? Movement, just doing something that allows you to move. And I've been doing that for a long time, sharing that with people for a long time.
What if you try to self-care, but you're too busy caring for others, right?
Right. So I think that you have to also connect. And this is a mind shift, right? As leaders, you cannot pour from an empty pitcher. If your pitcher is empty, if your bucket is empty, you don't have anything to give to other people. So you have to care for yourself first to make sure that you're whole first, right? Before you're then able to give that to anyone else. The other thing is we often talk about lead by example with our teams. But leading by example means that you are doing the example that you're leading. Right? So if you're saying it's important for you to take care of yourself and it's important for you to stay connected to where you are in your thoughts, and you're not doing that, then it's not giving the example that you want your folks to see. It becomes a do as I say, not as I do. No, we actually want to do it. And as you're doing it, it becomes a model for others as well.
So I got to take that vacation this summer.
You got to take that vacation this summer. Yeah. It was so funny. I'm working with the school district in Georgia, and we're meeting on Friday. We're meeting virtually on Friday. And I was meeting with a group of them, and as they were talking about our next meeting time, they said, well, this is during spring break, but we can meet on Friday. And I said, you can't meet with me on Friday because I said, do you work during spring break? And they said, no, it's about 5 of them in the meeting, all cabinet level leaders. I said, do you work during spring break? They're like, no, we don't work during spring break. I said, then you're not meeting with me during spring break because that has to be time that you protect. Go do something that you enjoy. We can meet at another time. It's not that urgent. We can wait until the following week. But it's really releasing people so that they understand it doesn't have to be this all the time, right? And even as a system leader, I was always on, right? I was always involved and engaged, but used movement as an initiative for students. Yeah. Because it's really important that our children are also moving and getting activity, Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about mentors.
Sure.
Can you share a story or anecdote about a great mentor experience you had when someone mentored you, and then talk a little about some of the mentoring you've done for others?
Yeah. So it's funny to me. I have had so many amazing mentors. One of them that I go back to, who is still one of my, mentors to this day, right? We often use executive coaching, but to me, that's still mentoring, in some capacity. And this person was my very first principal when I became an administrator. And throughout the years, she has continued to show up very present in the work that I do. And I think it's because she understood me. You know, she was comfortable in her own skin. So therefore I was, I was excited and I was driven and I was passionate about the work even then. And so she was able to, and has been able over the years to continue to encourage me in the areas that I needed encouragement, but also to say, okay, you might need to correct this because that is showing up as something different. And so I think the best mentors are those that they see you, they hear you, they value you, but at the same time, they recognize that your success is their success, right? And they really want you to be successful. So because they want you to be successful, they're going to be honest with you, right? Honest feedback is so important. And working with people that you trust, right? And that you can be yourself with, and they are not going to judge you. Yeah. They're going to be there to support you. And so, that's one. I have so many, just because, I have wonderful people that have just connected with me throughout my career. This is year 33 for me, right? And so, the way that they have just poured into me has really been powerful.
Well, the way I hear superintendents talk about the text threads, like isn't the text thread kind of a group mentor, right? Support network.
Yeah. So
helps you get through.
Yeah. So, we actually have done some work around, we were looking for, superintendent groups and really being able to keep them together. And when I realized that it had really become a thing, there was a doctoral student that reached out to me to have some dialogue about what we do, in our conversations that we do together, because it had come up to her more than once, and it was in one of the articles that was written. And so that is just an opportunity to network and to mentor, but more importantly, to support.
Safe space.
Because there is always somebody that has been where you are, wherever that moment in time is. It doesn't matter where it is. So when you are having, when you're at the highest of the high and everything is going exactly the way that you want it to go, there are other people that are experiencing the exact same thing. And there are people that are there to cheer you on when that's happening. But, and we see it all too often, a lot of people are hurting, right? And they need safe spaces, right? And they need, people other than their family that truly love them. They need people that they can talk to about their experiences, those that can encourage them, that can give them strategies, that can give recommendations. And so, the work that we do together that way has really become a strong support system.
We use the expression, it's a thankless job, but there is a point where that gets pretty old, right? Because you're trying to help kids and people are beating you up over it. And you need to have support to survive in that kind of work. And
what you find is that very rarely does that support come from your current role, right? Yeah. I used to often say, and I still believe this to be the case, that each day, I hope the decisions that I make tick off fewer people today than it did yesterday. Yeah. Right? Because regardless to what decision you make when you're a system leader, somebody is not going to be happy. And I've given some very specific examples of times in my experiences that's happened. So you have to lead from the heart, knowing that you're making the very best decision that you can, an informed decision on what's important. And that way you can sleep at night, right? And if you're able to do that and even if you make the wrong decision, but you do it for the right reason, you can sleep at night. And so I think that that's really important.
Well, today I think a lot of us are having to do a little bit of mental gymnastics to maybe use different words so we don't upset somebody, so that they understand, because the concept of being inclusive, almost everyone supports that, right? The concept of every kid getting an equitable access, who doesn't want that if you're a public school advocate, right? So I think we're having to find ways to sleep well, even if we're going to use different words because of, a certain political thing, right? And right. And that, and I've talked to people on all sides of the political spectrum on this in our business. And we all kind of agree, we got to keep doing the work and we got to be able to sleep well while doing it. So,
well, kids need us, right? And you know, this is a very difficult time. And so a lot of what I do as well is around encouragement, right? But like recognizing that it can be done. It's being done, right?
Yeah.
We are leading initiatives that are improving outcomes for children. We are making sure that kids are getting the things that they need in school that make them whole, right? We are the safest space for many of our children across the board. And I've worked with all different populations, right? We are a space for them. And so recognizing that we can't retreat, right? Just because things are a little haywire right now. If we then retreat and we don't stay in the game and we don't stay connected, what happens to our kids?
Yeah. Thanks for chatting with me.
You're
and
welcome.
Keep hustling out there. Look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you.